All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. I'm joined with an old friend, a superstar of the UFC. Right before I introduce her, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulty transitioning from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. To reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Miranda the Maverick. Okay, Amanda, do you still go by the Maverick? Or
It's
I saw
like
Fear
the Maverick.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Miranda Maverick, this girl is absolutely paving the way for female martial arts. She won a 8-woman tournament for Invicta, 3 fights in one night, flew here the next day to our female mega camp, and has since gotten signed at the UFC and started her reign of terror. So I don't want to steal any more of your thunder, but let's do it this way, Miranda. Let's take the listeners all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
Who was Miranda as a young girl? What were you like as a kid? What sports did you play?
Okay.
And then let's lead into how did you get into martial arts?
Sure. Mine is a very unusual story, I'd say, but pretty engaging as well. MMA started, I'd say, just the introduction to it when I was around 14 years old. But before that, I was always an athlete growing up, worked on a farm, grew up on a farm. My dad moved around from state to state with me and my little brother and sister and the rest of my family. And he would buy rural properties and we'd clean them up, build fence, build entranceways, build houses, whatever the case may be. And we didn't hire people to do it. We did it ourselves. So I was working like a full-grown man, I'd say, by the time I was 10 to 12 years old. And that I credit with a lot of my success in MMA and really in life in general. So, from that young age, I started in school and I would do soccer and basketball and anything really I had the opportunity to do. I arm wrestled at the age of 3 to 6. Literally my dad would do arm wrestling competitions and host them for St. Jude's cancer awareness and things like that. And it was really cool. He used it as his own foundation, I guess you'd say, and I want to be able to start that up again in the future at some point. I'd be really excited to do that, but that's kind of how my athletic journey started. Gymnastics when I was really little, quit that when I was 10, did all these different sports all the way up through high school. Track and field I was pretty good at. Then I wrestled my senior year, but that wasn't until after I had already started jiu-jitsu at the age of 16. So to start my MMA story off, I was 14 years old. We had already been watching the UFC for a few years, right? I was a big fan of GSP, Matt Hughes, Brock Lesnar when he came up, And then this first women's fight in the UFC, which was Liz Carmouche, I believe, versus Ronda Rousey, I was watching that and I was like, whoa, I didn't realize these women did this, right? And my dad was like, yeah, they do. This is pretty cool, right? You could do that. You could be the world champion. And I was like, no, I don't want punched in the face, right? But the wrestling stuff looks cool. That submission stuff that Ronda Rousey's doing. And, I watch her reign of terror, as you call it, through the UFC. And she's getting all these arm bars and all this stuff. And I was like, I could do that. All these females have weak limbs, compared to what I do. And my dad had always wrestled with us at home, but I never realized until I actually started in a real gym how well he was doing at teaching us jiu-jitsu. He wasn't just teaching us to grab a hold of somebody and try to pin them to the ground. He was teaching us heel hooks and arm bars and stuff that people thought I was a jerk for doing once I got into a gym because I didn't realize heel hooks weren't for white belts, So I finally, at 16, asked my dad if I could go to an actual gym to train. I was like, out of all sports, I feel like my body, the short, compact way my body's built is made for this jiu-jitsu, MMA, wrestling stuff. And so he told me I could go as long as I found a way to pay for it because he wasn't going to help me with it. He had 2 other little kids to raise, and I was also helping homeschool them at the time. There was just a lot of busyness going on, and he needed help on the farm. So I was like, okay. And I ended up cutting firewood all winter with my dad, and my brother and sister actually helped too and gave them a little percentage. And so we'd sell firewood, and that's what I used for my gym payments the first few months. Yeah.
Wow, so you really had an old school family, even in modern times where your dad was just, finding work to get by, buying property, putting in the manual labor and the hours, that you have to do to be successful in something like that. And you're basically not being spoon-fed everything. You were out there working on, chopping firewood as a young woman to be able to pay for the classes that, to see what you could become as an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. People are like, well, why didn't you go get a real job? Well, the gas was so high that by the time I would have gotten a job that I could have gotten at the age of 16, like it would have been almost stupid to go anywhere and do it. One car wreck and you lose all your money that you would have made in that month. So I waited to actually get a job until I was 18 in the town that was like an hour away from where we lived because we were out in the middle of nowhere. There was Buffalo, Missouri, which is about 25 minutes from my house. That's where I went to school for high school. But then, like, where I went to college and where there was any real jobs was Springfield, Missouri, and that was about an hour away. So, anyway, he told me that. I went to this place. I like to call it a McDojo. I kind of laugh about it, but I give them credit for starting my martial arts journey. It's called Dynamic Edge Martial Arts in Springfield, Missouri. Went there. A blue belt was the one who owned and ran the gym, which at the time I didn't realize was not that great, but I learned some stuff. The reason I went there was because they had a juvenile class, so it was full of a bunch of boys from 14 to 18 years old, and I was not very comfortable rolling with men. In fact, that's the reason I didn't want to do the sport. I was like, I don't know about this whole getting in close contact with men kind of thing. I'm still like a child, basically, and it's just uncomfortable for me. So I start there. Within a couple weeks, I realize I'm just kind of leaps and bounds ahead of my age group as far as jiu-jitsu goes and just strength and all that, especially against other girls. So I asked them if I could compete. They didn't like the idea of competition, said it kind of promoted violence in their eyes. So I kind of quit that day, went home, told my dad, I quit jiu-jitsu. I'm going to a different gym. And he's like, what do you mean you quit? And I was like, well, I'm not quitting. I just want to go somewhere else. So I think it was either my birthday or Christmas present, can't remember which. He paid for like 2 months ahead of time at this new gym called Springfield Fight Club. And that's where I stayed until I was pretty high level in Invicta and ended up moving out to Virginia for grad school. But moved to Springfield, Missouri that following summer when I almost turned 18. I hadn't quite turned 18 for college, for undergrad school in Drury University. And I told the coaches there that I wanted to try MMA. And they were like, okay, but you've never even been punched in the face. And I was like, well, we can change that, I'll start coming to striking. And so I did, and within 3 weeks, I had a fight set up as an amateur, my first ever amateur fight. And it was a crazy experience,
Your coaches went from, wait, you have never been punched in the face, but we can do that, to like 3 weeks later, they're lining you up in MMA fight.
Yeah, so I was already pretty good at jiu-jitsu, and then I had just a natural affinity, I guess you'd say. Like, I'm not a great striker. Anybody who knows me from a long time ago when they watch my fight knows that I started out not knowing how to punch anything. But I had just enough power and just enough to where I was going to be able to survive through the amateur rankings. This is very different. And of course, with women, there was less competition, and especially when I started, now there's probably 5 times as much as there was even 4 or 5 years ago. So, I took that first fight, and the fight was like 2 months after that. So even though they booked it 3 weeks later, I still had 3 months or so to train and learn. And I told them, I was like, I'll be in there every single day once I move into the dorms at Drury University. They were like, yeah, that's what they all say, right? And I did. I skipped student orientation. I literally skipped it to go to class. I booked my schedule for school around it. And I went to the gym every single day, was training for like 4 hours at least a day at first, maybe 3. And they were like, you're crazy. Okay, though, like if you're wanting to do it, like she's going in head first. And one of my coaches kind of warmed up to me, he's like, oh, you're working hard. Like, I see that you're really trying. Let me become your coach. And he's like a second dad to me now, like Brett Welcome over at Springfield Fight Club. Shout out to him. But he was my jiu-jitsu coach mainly at first. And Nathan Stamberski was my striking coach at first. And they cornered me pretty much up until I moved every time, unless they weren't available,
I want to talk about leading up to that first fight, because that's a huge moment. So
it
now
is.
You're in this new sport. You're, you made the mental leaps from like, man, do I even see myself training against these guys and in this environment, to like one of the most dedicated people in the room. Now you make a jump that like, I need more. I go to a new academy. I'm seeking out these challenges. They book you a fight. Yeah. Now, when you go to tell your family about the fight for the first time, when you show up at the fight the first time, like that's a big moment, because you're about to make the climb up to that cage for the first time ever, and it changes you. You know what I mean? For anyone that's fought, it changes you permanently. Talk a little bit about that, because I think your listeners now seeing you're at the pinnacle. You're in the UFC. You could be world champion one day. Talk about that first moment. What was it like? What did your family think? Did they show up? Or they, just go over that.
Well, first, I had a few competitions before that for jiu-jitsu specifically, and, competed as a white belt multiple times, like as many as I could get a hold of, right? Spent all my money on signing up for jiu-jitsu competitions because I had gotten my scholarship into college. I was like, I got all this money, let me save some, and then the rest goes to jiu-jitsu and MMA. And my coaches were so nice. Like, they didn't make me hardly pay anything to come to the gym because I was this little girl that was, at first, literally only coming every other Thursday after school because the rest of the time I either had wrestling practice or had to go home and help Dad with stuff. And so they were like, listen, it's like this amount per month. And I was like, that's nothing. And they were like, yeah, I don't care. You help clean the mats, whatever. And so when I took this first fight, my dad was all for it. He's so supportive. When I got into jiu-jitsu, he was so happy. I was winning every competition. I don't think I lost a single competition until I was a purple belt, unless it was on the men's stuff, because a lot of local competitions, they wouldn't even have females sign up. And so I would go up and, do the whole modern day, like, you can't say what gender I am, and like joke around with them, but they knew who I was and they were like, all right, we'll put you with the men, but if they don't want to compete with you, we can't force them to. And I was like, all right. But usually the guys are pretty cool. They might move up a weight division or two if I was the only one in their division, but I just moved up too. I think the highest I ever did was a 170-pound men's competition because just nobody was there. And I was like, I might as well try. And I actually beat one of them, but I ended up getting third place at that competition. It's like the most proud medal I have because I tried my best. And I remember my dad was just like, you're crazy. You shouldn't have done that competition. You're going to get hurt. But my dad, my whole family, actually, my mom, my stepmom, my brother, my sister, all kinds of people came to that first MMA fight. I was so nervous, so worried, and talked to my dad beforehand. And, he's like, it doesn't really matter to me. If you win, lose this, like, I'll love you the same no matter what, because I was so stressed, And I was like, you could die in this sport, and I've watched these, and you never know how experienced they are. The other girl didn't have any videos. I'm just going in there blind. And I was like, for all I know, she's another jiu-jitsu person. I think I had gotten my blue belt not too long before this. And so I go in there, and I told my dad if I won and I liked the idea of beating up this girl afterwards, then I would continue going and be the best I could ever be. If I lost and or if I didn't like the feeling of beating up this girl, because I'm a nice person. Anybody who knows me in the MMA community knows, like, I'm the first one to be like, ooh, I'm sorry I hit you too hard. Or
I can attest to this.
And it scares me. Like, hurting people in practice, I don't want to do that. I don't even like hurting them in a fight. But if they've trained for it, so be it. Now that I get paid, I don't feel so bad. But at that time, those were my two barriers. And I ended up going in, winning the fight, not even remembering what happened during the fight. I pretty much blacked out and was like, Dad, what happened? Like, I know I won, but I don't remember how. And actually, it just got done being reposted on Twitter. And somebody was like, oh, look at this old vintage I found. And it's me with my first Amy fight. I had never seen a video of it, so that was pretty cool. And it's so embarrassing. So embarrassing.
Do you remember what year it was? Just to give, like, kind of perspective of,
It would have been 2015.
Wow, so you've only been competing for 6 years.
Yeah.
Wow, and you're in the UFC?
Yeah, I'm in the UFC. Got into the UFC 4 years and like 8 months after I had my first fight.
That's a meteoric rise to come through the ranks like that. But like you said, you were kind of a natural right away when you started training. When you looked at yourself in other age groups, like you're like, okay, this is another female around my age, and I'm thrashing her. So you kind of saw that you were gifted.
I saw that, and more than anything, it was strength at the very beginning. Like people, discredit it, almost credit it too much when I started as a pro, and I got kind of grumpy about it because I was like, I have a lot of good technique too, but just that farm strength is a whole nother level. Like, there's people who are strong and they're like, oh, they bench this much, they do this. I'm like, I don't care what I can bench, but I'll throw your butt around. Like, I don't care how big you are. My dad always brags I could pick him up at the age of 5, like on my shoulders and just pick him up. And like now I could probably carry my dad up on my shoulders on stairs, like I have a lot more mobile strength than most people because I was carrying buckets of feed. I was throwing sacks of feed on my back and just not thinking anything of it at the age of 8 and 10 years old and just walking down the feed troughs and back, basically doing super farmer carries and squats 24/7, and nobody really thinks about that, And,
I mean, there's a reason that farm strength is this thing. Like, we all know what that term is. People that grew up in the Midwest, like, we joke around those people like, oh, that person's farm strong, because it's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's because it's practical use of your body every single day. So you're developing all the ligaments and tendons and little muscles. So you're not just moving one weight, you're using your body as it's designed every day. And there's absolutely a difference. If you haven't trained with someone that grew up on a farm, or even like people just work with their hands all day long.
The grips, oh my goodness. I've actually lost a lot of grip strength since being on the farm. My dad makes fun of me for being a city girl now. I go back home, and my little sister, who's only about to turn 18 can beat me in any strength thing we do, which is crazy to people, but I'm like, it's true. Like, I've been training every day all the time, but strength is different than me being able to whoop her butt, of course. But if we arm wrestle, if we grab a hold of something and see who can squeeze harder, she'd probably win, you know? And back in the day, I milked cows every day. Like, there's nothing that makes your hands stronger than that nonsense. And people are like, oh, dang, this girl's a hillbilly. But I really did, you know? And we had a big ranch. We still have a big ranch called Maverick Ranch out in Tunis, Missouri. And I just added some property onto it, which I'll get to later, I'm sure. But you know, I started that amateur career. I had 8 amateur fights within the first year of my competition in MMA, and I went 7-1. My only loss was actually in Denver, Colorado, where I'm getting ready to move to. The girl was local. I still to this day don't think I lost from watching the fight, but they liked the strikes. I was doing takedowns and threatening submissions the whole time, so it is what it is. You know, should have done a little better, and the elevation got to me in round 2, like many factors. But I remember as an amateur thinking, you know, these girls are all way older than me that I went against. And my jiu-jitsu was always the thing winning. I think out of the 8 fights, 6 of them ended in the first round via arm bars. And so we started the whole term #farmbar, right? And that was mine.
I remember that.
Yeah, I have the rash guard. Exactly. I think Heidi has one. So that's pretty cool. So it started that whole thing, you know, and my coaches, the whole nickname Fear the Maverick came from me being too nice to my opponents. And I would always walk up to them during weigh-ins, be like, hi, I'm Miranda, you know, and you know, we're about to fight, but I hope nobody gets hurt in there. Like, best of luck. And they're always like, what is wrong with this girl? And my coach is like, you need to make them fear you, like, fear the Maverick. And then somehow it got stuck. And at first I was like, I can't stand this nickname. And then, you know, as time grew and people started recognizing me by it, I was like, you know what, fine, I do kind of like it. Like, it's finally grown on me enough that I like it.
The way you just told that story makes it click. Like, they need to fear the Maverick. I mean, I can see how that would stick easily, you know? And that's it's trying to create a persona that you are when you walk to that cage. Because you have to flip a certain switch and not be this super kind, like, oops, sorry, did I kick you a little too hard in the face today? You know, you have to make that switch. So it's honestly fitting for you and your fight style and personality.
It is. And, you know, I got a Facebook message of all things from Shannon Knapp to make my pro debut. She asked me if I was interested in making a pro debut for Invicta. And I, at first, disregarded the message. I literally thought it was a fake Shannon Knapp because I didn't read the message. I was just like, why would Shannon Knapp message me on Facebook? Like, surely she would, like, email or contact management or my coaches or whatever. And I was on break, working for Cracker Barrel, by the way, as a waitress for, like, 5 years straight. And I was in the break room, and I was like, you know what, I better recheck that message, right? And so I go and I actually read it, and I start like screaming and crying in the break room, and everybody's like, what is going on with Mav, you know? And I was like, oh my God, I got into Invicta, you know? And I'm calling my dad, and I'm like, oh, there's this opportunity, and he's like, take it, that's huge. And for any female mixed martial artist listening, like, and anybody that doesn't know, Invicta FC is like the largest women's organization in the world, like only women, and it's so exciting to get into that as a pro debut. You know, I was thinking 4-0, 5-0, I might get my way into Invicta, but I was like, getting to make my pro debut on their 20th anniversary, I was like, taking this, you know, against another pro debuter is a perfect matchup. Went in there, won by rear naked choke, and then just kind of started my reign through Invicta. Took a couple losses. My second pro outing was pretty scary. I was the most intimidated by that one just because of the way she looked, and she was just jacked, you know, and had just beaten Tiffany Van Soos.
Who was it?
Cal Holiday, and she's the one who, after I fought her, actually beat up Kay Hansen with ground and pound and stuff, and she had just got done when I fought her beating Tiffany Van Soos, who, you know, huge striker and everything, and I watched that fight live, and so I was, like, intimidated, you know, and then, of course, that's my second fight offer, and no disrespect to Shannon whatsoever, but I remember her coming to the back and being like, just remember, you're young, it won't matter, you know, even if you lose, there's so much more to your career. And I was like, oh no, she doesn't believe in me either, you know, like, I'm sitting in there like shark bait. And my dad was really nervous, even though he was trying not to show it, and I was like, you've got to quit whatever you're doing, you know, like asking me questions about the fight, am I ready, all this, and I was freaking out. Missed weight, went into shock in the bathtub trying to cut weight at 115, by the way. And I wasn't much smaller than I am right now, which is walking around. I was still walking around at 140, but probably was a little less muscle, more fat at that point. It was terrible. It was the worst experience of my life, and my dad made me promise I wouldn't do 115 again until I at least was a higher level pro and, you know, got a nutritionist. But at the time, the UFC didn't have a 125-pound division. So I was scared to go to 125 and never get my shot at the dream, which was being in the UFC. And, let's see, the next milestone, I guess, was that tournament for Invicta that happened in summer of 2019, it would have been, I think. Yeah. And so that was 3 fights in one night, of course, that eight-woman tournament, which it's ridiculous kind of how you don't get an official 3 wins on your record. I still count it as 3 wins. I won't even get into that. I feel the worst for Deanna Bennett because she got a loss while 4 other girls that she beat, or 5 other girls, 6 other girls ended up not having anything on her record, even though we both beat them. And
yeah, because they're exhibition one-round
right.
bouts. Yeah.
And so Deanna leaves with a loss on her record. I leave with a win on my record, and nobody else has any scars to show for it, which I think is silly, but whatever. And it was actually my redemption match against Deanna Bennett. I had already lost against her as a pro and was able to get that win back at that tournament, which was really cool. Got crowned, Phoenix Series 2 champion. And I thought that would line me up for the title shot for Invicta. Somehow it didn't, had to fight Pearl Gonzalez, who had more followers than me, had more attention. I would assume that's part of what went into that. And it had a bout against Vanessa Porto earlier that had been like a stoppage because of an eye poke. So I guess they were giving her another chance. Fought Pearl, put on a jiu-jitsu clinic. I think I finished the fight 30-27, 30-26, 30-27. And finally got that call that I've been waiting for my whole life, And so I got a call from my management that was like, hey, you want a UFC fight? And I've been offered, don't get me wrong, I've been offered multiple times. But as a fighter, there's times when you take them and times when you don't. And when they're 3-day notices against these big names and you're only getting a 1-fight contract, you already know it's not a smart decision. Like, Antonia Shevchenko was the first person I ever got offered to fight on a 3-day notice. No joke, 3-day notice. Back in 2018, I was like 3-0 or something in Invicta, and I was like, oh, UFC, and that's what they do, is they get these pros that are like excited to get into Invicta. And I would have been 20, and I was like, no, my dad was like, do not take that fight. And he was right. I wouldn't have been able to make weight. I would have missed weight. I would have possibly lost, potentially. And she goes in there and goes against this Chinese girl who also missed weight. I think she was Chinese, and ended up beating her. And, we never heard about that girl again. And I was like, yep, that could have been me had I not gotten the right advice. And then, other opportunities came up and I just never took them. Right after the Pearl fight, I got a fight offer 5 days after that. And that was funny. I was like, I really want to take that one. It was against Macy Chasen at 135 pounds. And it would have been a 4-fight contract. And I was like, I could do that. And even if I lost, it'd be okay. And that's a terrible way to go into it. And I was still sore. I was still a little beat up. My head was a little sore from some elbows. Pearl threw at my head from side control and different things like that. And I was like, I guess I'll wait. But even watching the fight against her versus Shannon Knapp, who was in Invicta. I'm sorry, not Shannon Knapp. I can't remember. Shannon, who's in Invicta and now in the UFC from that fight, she took it. And I was like, well, I beat that Shannon in like a minute in our bout against each other in the tournament, and she just almost beat Macy Chasen. So I was confident I could have taken that fight, but at the end of the day I didn't, and I ended up having what was supposed to be my debut against Ashley Evans Smith that March, I think it was, and that was the first card to get canceled from COVID. It was the Tyrone Woodley card. And it got canceled, and I was so upset because they pulled the contract from me, and I didn't get it at all. Like, I thought maybe the contract would still be okay, but it wasn't. So as everybody probably knows, I had what was supposed to once again be my debut in June, can't remember the exact date, I think June 10th, against Mara Barella. And so I went all the way to Vegas for that fight. I had done most of my medicals here or in Virginia, but I had 10-day notice for that fight, so I didn't get everything lined up, and they set up the eye appointment for myself down in Vegas. So I went to this eye doctor. He was like, hey, there's something wrong with your eyes. I can't approve it, but I just got out of school, so let me send you to this retina specialist. It's probably something genetic. No big deal. I was like, okay, I don't really have problems with my eyes. I can't see the best in the world. I got glasses, but nothing different than most people. Go to this retina specialist, and she just kind of breaks the news to me that I'll never fight again. And she just basically says it like that. She's like, yeah, I don't see how you'll ever fight. This doesn't look good. Both your retinas are torn. And I was like, what? Both my retinas are torn. So that was definitely the biggest hurdle I've ever had in my fighting career. I've had extreme knee surgery before. Like, I tore my ACL, MCL, medial meniscus, lateral meniscus, and LCL at the same time. Only thing still together was my PCL. And tore it all in half, was screaming, crying when I heard it in the middle of a sparring session. Got surgery on it, fought and had my first pro loss 5 months later after the surgery, which I shouldn't have been cleared until a year after, but I was stupid and young and decided I was going to take a fight and make some money. But aside from that, that eye thing was so terrible. I was told I had like a 40% chance of going blind in each eye when I went to go do the surgery. It was supposed to be emergency surgery in Vegas. Of course, the fight was canceled. I was so upset. I was like, can we just bribe this person and let me fight? I'm right here at my debut for the biggest promotion in the world. This is my dream leading up to this, and now it's being ripped out of my hands. And at the end of the day, my eyes got fixed. I ended up coming back in a couple months, fighting in October, getting a great finish in the first round, doctor stoppage, and got all this attention and everything from it. Became ranked before I knew it, by my second fight, which was crazy. But that moment when I found out about my eyes and getting the surgery done, made me more grateful for anything that I've ever been in my life. And I feel like I was pretty humble already, but that kind of experience really makes you just find other avenues of your life where you can be successful. Because I was talking to my dad and I was just trying to make myself content with never doing anything athletic again. Because I went to 3 different surgeons before the one that I actually ended up going to. And they were all, you will never fight again. There's only one surgery we can really do to help you because of your age. And, I looked up and I'm like, well, Michael Bisping had this and other people. And it's like, yeah, and he doesn't have an eye that works. And it's like, well, crap. And I've got 2 eyes that are not going to work, And I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And they're like, well, there's pressure bubble, but that means you can literally never cause pressure to your eye. No flying in planes, no running, no picking up stuff, no doing anything athletic. And I'm like, I'm not 80. I'm 23 at the time, or 22 at the time. I actually had my first eye surgery on my birthday, which sucked. And my dad flew to Virginia for me to see that done because this surgeon was going to do actually an old school surgery, and I have 2 buckles on my eyes now, sclera buckle surgeries. And so now I don't have any periphery hardly at all. Like my periphery, I can't see my own hands. But everything else is fine. It definitely was an adjustment. Headgear doesn't bother me anymore because I can't see past the headgear anyway, But yeah, that was a huge kind of stepping stone in my life to find out what was really important to me and be able to reach outside of just MMA and see what else I had going. And talking to my dad, I was like, my whole life's over, is what I said at first. I was like, I don't know if I can live with this. And my dad's like, don't ever fucking say that again. Excuse my language. But he was like, you've got us first off, you've got the farm. And I was like, yeah, but I'll never be able to work on the farm again. I won't be able to look at a cow again. I won't be able to, all this stuff that I imagine doing, having kids, like all this stuff and seeing them play around. I can't even go play with them. I'm thinking of all this stuff throughout my life that I had planned, along with my relationship that I now have, which is awesome. He actually took care of me every day of the surgery. We might not be together if it weren't for that. It basically kept me out of doing anything for 2 months when I'd usually be busy and have things 24/7. But he gave me the eye drops and he took me all the surgeries and all the appointments, and that ended up making us closer. And but my dad flew out. I tell everybody he spoiled me more than I'd ever been spoiled in my entire life that weekend. Like, bought me this cake and bought me like $200 worth of groceries. And I remember laughing about it because he was so confused. I had nothing in my refrigerator when he got there, and he got there a day after I did from my fight. And I was like, well, I was on a weight cut. Like, I don't keep any food around me when I'm on weight cuts, and all I had was, like, some chicken in the freezer and some waters in the refrigerator. And he's like, all right, we're going shopping. And this man hasn't gone shopping on his own for 20-some years. And so we go, and he's, like, getting 10 apples and 10 of these and 10 of that because he's used to a 6-person family, having to feed, basically. And I'm like, Dad, I don't even eat that. I don't even eat this. And he's like, well, I'll eat some. And I was like, yes. And then there'll be 7 left around, and I'm giving away food to friends afterwards, all kinds of stuff. But that's the big journey. I'm sitting here, rambling on, but
no, this is really powerful stuff. You just talked about you were forced into a moment of reflection on your life, on what you're thankful for, on things you may not appreciate. They always say, like, anytime you have a major tragedy in your life, you normally look back and go, oh my God, all the time I wasted, all the things I should have done, yada, yada. At 22, you had people sit across from you and say, you'll never do what you love to do again. The dream that you've been holding on to, you need to let it go. It's not reality anymore. So what was it about the fourth surgeon? Because I can't tell you, even just from my coaching experience, how many people have gone and seen a doctor or a chiropractor or like someone for a knee injury, and they say the exact same words to them. They literally tell them, you'll never be able to fight again. You'll never. And most people are not like you. Most people listen to that. It gets in their head and they completely concede. They give up on their dream. They give up on their goals. Those words sink in so deep, like, oh, well, this is the expert. This doctor said I can never fight again, so looks like I'm done with pursuing my dream. Something was different with you. You went and saw how many people. What did the other guy do or say that gave you hope?
Well, it was, I guess it was 3 doctors, actually, not 4. But one, they did that same thing to me on my knee surgery. I'm going to tear up just thinking about everything. But they did the same thing on my knee surgery. Told me I gained 40 pounds at least on average, during the surgery, and that I'd never fight again, and it would take at least a year to recover. And so I was dead set on proving them wrong. I guess I've always felt like no one's ever, I shouldn't say no one. My dad believes in me, my family believes in me, and a couple choice friends. My circle's pretty small of who I trust. But everybody has always, throughout my life, been like, you're too young. You're a female, whatever the case may be. I don't like getting into the whole feminism stuff. Like, that's not what I mean. But just like different limitations they set on me because of who I am or how I'm built or whatever the case may be. And youth has always been the biggest one. You're young, enjoy life, go party in college, do this. Meanwhile, I got my undergrad done, double major in 3 years, and got full ride to grad school and undergrad. And I was like, you guys were all wrong at every door I ever went to. And now the knee surgery. You were wrong. I came back and fought in 5 months, lost weight, got more fit than I had ever been in my life, went to strength and conditioning every day, lost fat, got muscle, and I went back and I remember looking at the chart and they show your different checkups and your vitals during it, right? And I'm like, I lost 5 pounds here, lost 3 pounds there. Now I'm back to the original weight and I'm better than I've ever looked in my life, and I'm getting ready for my 5th fight. And if you go and watch that, I lost, don't get me wrong, against Brogan Walker Sanchez, but I looked better than I had ever looked. My striking was better than it had ever been. My coaches got mad at me because I had a full leg brace on and I had bent the braces because I was in there shadow boxing and stuff and not supposed to be, and I was like, well, it's fine though, I'm not hurt. And, looking back, I probably should have let it heal a little longer. I still have the click and all that in my knee, and it gets sore sometimes during the cold, but it is what it is. I'm so glad I went back, and I'm glad that I didn't listen to anyone. Then this eye surgery comes around, which is such a bigger deal. I can't look at a computer, which is my whole education. So that career was shot in my mind, potentially, 40% chance, they told me. But then I started looking at the actual statistics, and they were telling me this 40%. And, I'm a statistics major, basically. And I was like, I'm not listening to these people until I see if they're right. Because not every doctor, not every teacher is right. They got the same education I have, and I know how messed up the academic field is, So I was like, let me go look up for myself. These 40% stats are based off of these 80-year-old average people who are getting these surgeries, And I'm like, okay, well, I'm 24. I'm very healthy. I am going to do recovery correctly. I'm going to eat right, whatever else factors into that, And so I go and I heal within 2.5 months, do everything they say. And it's only God's miracle that anything happened right. I'm not taking the credit on myself or even the surgeon. But I do, I was praying that he'd keep her hands steady. And it was actually a female surgeon who did my surgery. She was a friend of a friend. And had I not met that friend, I would have never met her. And he was like, I actually have this friend that so-and-so goes golfing with. I'll reach out to her and see if she does these kind of surgeries. I was like, okay, it's probably a waste of time, but whatever. And so I go see her on a Sunday. She opens up her facility just for me, goes in there, opens it up, does an exam on me. And she's like, yeah, I can do it. Here's this option. Why don't you go look it up? She's like, yeah, I know what they're talking about, but they're wrong. You're so young. You should never get that done to you. And I was like, okay. And she gives me this information about this other surgery. I watched tons of YouTube videos over it. Go and read a textbook insert about it, And I was like, whoa, this is an old school surgery, but this could work. And I was so hopeful. And so I go and have the surgery, emergency timing, the next weekend, have my dad come fly in. My mom flew in for my second surgery. The first one went without any complications, whatever. The second one had a little bit of an infection. My vision's still a little bit messed up from it, but, it ended up better than I could have ever imagined. Have vision in both eyes, almost better in one eye than it had ever been, but the other one's a lot worse vision, but still. I'm not seeing any worse than the average person with glasses. So a miracle, that's all I can really, give it to for that. And I don't spar the same I did because the most likely cause of me getting it done is from sparring, because they said they could tell it was from trauma within 2 years, and that was while I was at the gym that I was at, and we sparred pretty hard. I only sparred with guys, and I know at least one time I got knocked out cold, another time I got poked in the eye real hard, and I'm like, those are probably the 2 times that made that happen, or it could just be an accumulation of every punch that I ever took. So, quit sparring like that, always wore headgear, which I thought was a little silly, but at least it would keep me from getting eye poked as easy or knuckles to the eye. Not so much concussion damage, I can argue that all day, but it kept me from my eyes getting hurt specifically, and I haven't sparred in MMA gloves since. Puffies, yes, so that's not what I mean to anybody listening, but MMA gloves specifically, and very trusted training partners. Like even this women's fight camp, like I'd be careful who I go with, or at least fight different styles with everybody depending on what I've seen them do. If they're, super jumpy or whatever else, I'm really careful. But it changed a lot, and it changed my mindset, like I said, more than anything. And since then, it's just like, even though I was already very driven before, now I'm like, I will reach my potential. I'm going to go be the best I can be. I'm going to be in the gym more than everybody. I'm going to be the best. I'm not going to cut the corners when I'm running a circle. I'm not going to cheat my way to the top. That's not how the champions get it done. So I'm trying to get everything done right. Obviously lost the last fight, but that's a whole different topic. Don't feel like I really lost it, but if I didn't finish the fight, then who cares? And if I don't get paid for it, who cares? I'm going back, trying to get to the top again.
Man, that little bit of healthy skepticism saved your life, Miranda.
Yeah.
I mean, really, a lot of people, like I said, they don't have enough, either whether it's faith or hope or belief within themselves, or even just like, experience in a field where you witness people be wrong about your knee. You study stats. You know how easily they can be manipulated. Like, because I'm the same way as you. As if I saw a 40% statistic, I'd be like, well, what's the group?
Yeah,
who are we looking at? You're already a 23-year-old versus an 80-year-old. Shouldn't even be in the same study. This should be in elderly patients. This is the success rate. Yeah. In healthy young adults. Because then you'd be closer to the truth.
But it's such a rarity. It's such a rarity to see somebody with torn retinas at my age, because why would that happen? It's not from wear and tear on my eyeballs. It's from these damaging things or extreme sports, and it's very rare cases, like only case studies really done on it. And I'd say faith carried me through it more than skepticism even. You pray about these things, and I'm like, Lord, show me the direction I'm supposed to go in. Like, feel like every door has been closed on me within 2 seconds. The second she said those words to me at the doctor's office, I was like, I'm done. Life's over, like find a whole new thing for yourself. I didn't even know where to start, and, praying about it and being like, should I even continue now that I know I am okay? Because had I not been a high-level pro, had I not been knocking on the door of the UFC and signed that contract, and they're just waiting around, which, by the way, UFC paid for my eye surgery. That was a miracle, too. I was like, if I had not been already there, I would have certainly never done MMA again. People, I had a girl reach out to me not too long ago, and she may be listening, I don't know. I feel really bad because I just gave her honest advice. She was like, hey, I'm having to have a retina surgery on one of my eyes. What do you suggest I do as far as getting back into training? And she was 2-2 as an amateur, and I told her I'd quit. I was like, you don't want my advice? Because here's what I would have done. I was like, had I not been a high-level pro, because the risk is so high, I can get my retinas hurt again. I try to not get hit as much as possible because it's still, one, I have very sensitive eyes, even putting on makeup hurts. And I'm like, if I was that level, I would never go fight again. Like, I would still train probably, I would still find it as a hobby, but I'd go find something else for my career.
Do you think that something shifted in you from all these experiences that made it, instead of like, you have to go to training, you have to do these things, to like now you want to, and you're so thankful to, because you've spoken about gratitude a couple times, and any motivational speaker or successful person always talks about how crucial the role of gratitude is in those that achieve greatness, right? Like, you almost have to be thankful for the journey that you're on, versus looking at it as like, oh man, another hard practice, another difficult day. Would you say you're a different woman that sits here today after these experiences?
I would. I'd say it still branches from the way I was raised, like I still had a lot of discipline, which was my biggest motivating factor. Like, even what you had us doing the other day, it's like, if you get out from bottom faster, you basically get more torture. So if you win, it's worse on you. And it's like the only thing that keeps you from being lazy in those situations is discipline. That's it. It's, you could just run the little letters, make it a little easier on yourself. or you could be disciplined and you could get that much better. You could sit there in bottom of side control and be like, oh, I'm just going to stay here anyway and not try to get out. Or you could use your discipline and get out of that. And it works the same way in life. I could carry it through so many other things than just MMA, that's the whole thing. I'm like, a lot of my friends are like, would you be my friend if I wasn't in the gym? I'm like, I don't care if you train. I don't care if you're in the gym. I just happened to meet you here. Great. But if I like who you are, you can quit and go start a cupcake business. I don't care. I'm supporting your business, right? Like, I support who you are, not what you're doing. And it just matters if you take those different attitudes into other avenues of your life. And I think that's what kind of carried me through all that. But then after that, it did become the whole gratitude. It became the wow, like, not only did I already know God existed and I already, had gotten baptized and took Christ into my life, but I was like, this is him just like, yeah, now go tell the world. And that's kind of what changed for me. I'm going to tear up again. I felt like now it changed from just a career for me to turning into like this ministry, this way of sharing my religious views to the world. I have such a platform. Why keep that hidden? I might lose a couple hundred followers, but at the end of my life, I'm going to look back and hate myself for not sharing why I got there, for not giving credit. Like my dad, I try to give him so much credit because one day I want to write a book and really tell everybody how much really has happened in my life that has been because of him, and how much struggle that he's gone through to make me who I am today, and my brother and my sister and all the people he's been around, because he cut off and left everything he grew up in to become a better human being and create us to be better human beings. And, I could go into detail about that, but I won't do that to him until he allows me to do that at one point in his life. But this religious thing on the other side of that, I'm like, okay, I'm giving my dad a platform and trying to make him, I try to be as thankful to him as I can and spread this relationship I have with my father and hopefully create better dads out there, create better dad-daughter relationships and siblings and all that. But now I have the opportunity to do more than just my father on earth, but I can also show them the Father in heaven that's like helped me and shown me all these ways that I can change my life a little bit and be a little bit more patient with people and be a little bit more sharing with people into what I've gone through. Because I, if anybody, have these stories of greatness that has come into my life. I search a dream, I pray about the dream, I set plans to do it, but it's not just me, like there is no reason all these things happen in my life that's good without some divine intervention that's creating those opportunities for me. Like, who's to say this little country girl, ever even saw MMA, ever even went to these gyms and created these opportunities, ever had these amazing coaches that helped me, or that I got here and was able to train with all these females and have interviews speaking things that I'm able to do and go commentate for fights. Like 5 years ago, the person who would have sat here would have been like, pro athlete? What? I've never dreamed of being a pro athlete. I don't even want to be a pro athlete. I want to go be a psychologist. And now I'm using my education as a hobby more than anything. I don't even like my education. I don't want to ever have to work a day in my life. I want to do MMA, make it big, be able to teach others that art and be able to teach them my religious values through it. I walk out to the song I walked out to last time for a reason. I try to be pretty open that I'm a Christian on my pages and stuff like that, and try to help those that reach out to me and think they get the faded view I'm a clinical psychologist. A lot of times I'm not, but I'll help you if you reach out to me or try to. But I guess that's it.
No, that's incredible. That's incredible. You're recognizing your platform. And you know how many people out there need good role models now more than ever, need more leaders? This society, I mean, we don't want to go off into a whole nother tangent, but like families have broken down. Father figures have broken down. Nurturing mothers have broken down. Society has crumbled in a lot of ways from the way that it should be. We should be tight-knit groups that teach these, morals, these patterns of being to the next generation to make people that are
But
capable.
It makes it harder to live that way. I wanted to catch on that. Like, me as a fighter, if I didn't use my religious values, if I decided to be immoral, I don't care who listens to this, I'm pretty open about it at this point. If I went and started an OnlyFans, if I went and decided to shake my booty on international television and wear a bunch of skimpy stuff all the time and show off what I think needs to be private in a home to everyone on earth, or treat others like crap, or whatever moral standard you may live by, I would have a much bigger following. I would make more money. I would probably have the UFC like promoting me rather than Macy Barber, for instance. but I would rather do it the way that I want to do it, that I think will get me, because, that goes into the faith thing again. I don't really care about money on earth or anything like that. Yeah, I'm going to try to get it while I'm here, but the whole goal is heaven, right? And I don't want to jeopardize that. Not to say I haven't done things wrong. I've done terrible things in my life, but I try my best to reel myself back on the railroad tracks instead of derail way over here and go down the other way. And I have so many opinions about that stuff, but it's easy to do it that way, or to cheat and lie to people and make money that way, or, start a business and crook some money away from people, and manipulate them. And let me tell you, I know how to, like my dad's a very charismatic person, and being charismatic really is the biggest attribute of being a leader. I can say you're a very charismatic coach. You're a very charismatic leader. And you could use that in so many bad ways. And the fact that you've chose to help people and spread a gym and a safe place for people to come, like I feel like it's our responsibility not to use these almost tempting things that are blessings, but can also be curses if you don't watch what you do with them.
1,000%. I mean, let's quote the Spider-Man movie: with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Exactly.
Like if you're an influential person, or you're someone that other people follow or look up to, your leadership is going to directly affect them. So if you're doing things that are not of good character, or you're making it seem okay to live in that way, or live by those moral standards, you're negatively influencing the world around you. You're still creating ripples. No matter what we do, we create ripples, right? Yeah. And they go outward from us, and then the world around us adjusts based on how we're interacting with it. So you need to constantly monitor that energy, but that only happens when you're either attached to like a purpose, or you're having serious self-reflection, or you take a step back every once in a while and go like, hey, how am I affecting these other people? And so many times people get blinders, you know what I mean? And if anyone can say they don't have a lot of periphery, right, it's you. But most people will put on blinders, and they don't take a step back and go like, am I living the best version of myself? Am I
Or even if they do wrong things, they'll be like, well, I repent afterwards, and I'm like, okay, but you already knew it was wrong and you did it anyway, and I hear a lot of things like that, whether it be people on diets, or people on whatever, and they go back and do that, and I'm like, yeah, but you knew at the beginning that you weren't supposed to do that, so that kind of changes the perspective. I kind of forgot what trail I was going to go off there.
It all goes back to discipline, though, and you said it earlier in this interview that really your family life and the way that you were brought up is what instilled these characteristics in you, so do you think there was just some innate parts of you, though, that like this, you were put on earth with this spirit and this energy that like, you're a go-getter, you're the person that is going to carve out your own path in this life? Or do you really think it was just the way that you were shaped based on your childhood?
I believe, from a psychology standpoint, nature versus nurture. I believe there's both. I know I was born with certain genetic things that make me who I am. Like, I'm a very ambitious person. I have siblings that were raised the same way. We have a little bit different personalities, like one of us may be more book smart than the other. One of us may be more ambitious than the other. You could say, well, I'm the oldest, so I have more responsibility. True. Was I raised a little different? Maybe. My dad was a little harder on me than as a kid. But then my brother, he was harder on him because he was a boy and he wants him to be like a leader, and that kind of thing. And I was raised very old school. I call my dad, or here, I'll quote actually a Facebook comment from somebody after he had an interview. And it was like, sir, you're a mix of Andy Griffith and Superman, and I always laugh. I'm like, yeah, he reminds me of John Wayne, and I'm like, he doesn't necessarily fit in with the societal norms. But if he sees something wrong, he'll do something about it, whether it gets him in trouble or not. And that can be a bad thing in today's world. And that's why he locks his gate, has a farm, and says, bye, I don't like people very much, But when he gets around people, like for my fights, mainly he's very charismatic, learning everything he can, keeping up with stuff and people and finding the good people and sorting out the bad, and always giving me that mental advice. But how I was raised also helped. There were things I would do that if I didn't have the discipline to keep going, I could kill someone or something, whether it be an animal because I decided not to wake up early enough to feed them, whether it be my siblings because there's this heavy pipe that's going to fall on them and I see it and I don't run over and grab it real quick and just strain and hold it until a piece of equipment gets over there lifted off of me. There's been so many instances like building fence where my siblings could have died, and I was like, okay, I've got to do this. If I drop this or I do that, they could die or they could get hurt, we could use the lesser, the minimum of it is they get lucky and don't get hit by whatever this thing is, but you have a little 4-year-old and 5-year-old running around all the time. It gets pretty risky.
I want to shift a little bit and
Yeah.
also talk about the academic side of Miranda Maverick
Okay.
because I know it and I've seen it. I've seen you immediately finish a training session and go straight back to work. And the people that may not know your story as well don't realize like how much you juggle.
Yeah.
You juggle so much. So let's talk about who Miranda is outside
Okay.
of being the athlete. And recently you've gone through a little bit of a collision
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you have that side of society being like, give up the pipe dream and the nonsense for like a secure, be an accountant, get a paycheck.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we should just go over all that too, because I feel like a lot of people face that in their life where
Okay.
they'll have their dream and then they have what they're being told to do.
Yeah.
And like you've had to struggle with a serious balance.
Yeah, I've heard people, for instance, like parents who try to do MMA or parents that also try to get an education. And I can kind of talk on both. I'm not a parent myself, of course, but I'm busy as a parent, I have the MMA, which I do 5 hours a day on average, I'd say. I have a part-time job with Hershey, but I'm not a full employee. I'm a contracted employee. I always have to include that. And I also go to school until this semester full-time for graduate school, finishing up my thesis, which I lost motivation on this past summer, or I would already be done, for those being like, wow, she's been in school a minute, I have been in school a minute. I would have been done already, but I did have a collision. I was supposed to be going for my PhD in industrial organizational psychology, Old Dominion University, which I go to. Super supportive of me as a school themselves. I'm on the front page of their thing. They're advertising they have this professional athlete who's, internationally recognized, but also I'm doing their school program and doing very well at it, excelling. Like this past semester, I got an award as the best teaching assistant, Yeah, cool and all, but they kind of hurt me with some backlash and basically made me choose between MMA and completing my PhD, or I should say moving on from the master's to the PhD. And what hurts the most is I already had about a year of PhD classes under my belt and had passed them all and done really good. And I could transfer, but I'm not going to. I've decided to just focus on MMA. It's a young person's sport, and I can go get a PhD at any time. I've already gotten a job with my degree, and hopefully I won't need the job after next year anyway. I just want to get a little bit experience so I don't start out brand new when I decide my MMA career's over. But yeah, that's been hard to deal with as well. But from that side of things, I've never really liked being in school, but I feel like I've been in school longer than most people I know. But it's really helped me in life. I've gotten free schooling the entire time, ended up moving out to Virginia, finding the person I love, having a lot of good experiences, going to a gym that improved my striking, all these things. Once again, I think it's God. Like, I had opportunities to get a master's that was at Springfield, Missouri, like an hour away from my home. I could have continued going to Springfield Fight Club, which, not to hate on them at all, I love them, they're like a family to me, but they didn't have as good of a striking system. I kind of had reached a limit where I was growing slowly, but not super fast, and when I moved to a different place, learning different techniques and a whole different style of Muay Thai rather than kickboxing, it improved my level of fighting times 10, I'd say, and that was great. Had I not had what I thought was a PhD that was getting paid for in Virginia, I wouldn't have been there. But now we're back to the master's. It's going to be done. I'm moving to Denver now. I'm making another new change in my life. I'm going to Team Elevation out there, which will be mixed with other coaches as well, maybe from Pound for Pound and things like that. I'm going to just see which coaches work best for me once I get out there. But so many opportunities that have come from little decisions that I never thought would be that impactful. And also, going up to Colorado, I'll be closer to my family. I bought some acreage and a house connecting to my dad's place not too long ago. That's where I want to be when I grow up, and decide I want a family and stuff like that. So I'm trying to make these goals and get the path to them by, finding these means to the end, I guess you'd say. And MMA is not my only dream. People are like, well, that's your dream. Yeah, but I have many dreams. I'm not one of those people that starts with, this is all I want in life. No, I want a lot in life, and I guess it'll always keep becoming more and more. Not that I'm not okay with where I'm at, but if I've reached this, that means I have a further potential. I'm only 24. I've reached the UFC. I've reached the goal of getting the land that I wanted for life. That's all I was ever going to get. And now I've bought a little more property, and then I want to invest in other things and try to be really, really careful with money too, which is probably one of the biggest things I'd advise MMA fighters about, because a lot are poor once they get out and they make way more money than I have. And I'm like, you need to be using your money more wisely. But again, that's another topic.
No, it's amazing to hear that you're basically stretching your imagination for your potential every time you hit that new level. You've never sat back and go, okay, I've done it. I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to relax.
Yeah.
I'm the woman that, because like you said, imagine go back 5 years and let this Miranda show up, and we could jump in a time machine and you walk up and you say, oh yeah, you're in the UFC now and you're moving to Denver and you've bought property by your father and your family. Like, you would just start bawling your eyes out and crying.
Absolutely.
You know
I
what
wouldn't
mean?
have believed it would have ever existed, and every step of the way, I never believed it would exist, It wasn't a whole, I believe in myself, so I'll get there. Absolutely not, I believed maybe one day I'd reach the moon when I shoot for the stars, but now I have. I've reached the stars that I all set for myself. There's very few goals that I haven't accomplished, but again, I don't give myself credit for that, I said I'd be an Invicta by this certain time, beat that, became a pro before I turned 19. That was a goal, and I was like, hey, I signed the contract 2 weeks before I turned 19. It counts, Then I get into the UFC, not quite as soon as I wanted to. But a lot of that was because of the eye surgery, because of the COVID layoff and all that. And then it becomes, okay, I want to be ranked in the UFC in like 2 years. Well, that happened within like 6 months, right? And then I became, now I'm number 14 again. That's unfortunate, but hopefully top 10 in another, 6 months or so. And then, in another year, perhaps contending for the title and hopefully be there by the time I'm 26 to 27.
I think that's such a good point for people at home that are listening that have goals, is you need to set goals, right? And shoot as far to the stars as you can. But every time you attain a level of a goal, you need to realize like you've done that, you've accomplished that. Now take that same energy that got you there and reestablish new goals. Because if you peak out at like, okay, I just wanted to get signed to the UFC, and you're going to lose motivation because now you don't have that next thing to chase, that next thing right ahead of you. In the UFC, obviously, the goal is always world champion. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah,
so
of course.
Outside of the MMA field, what are your goals?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, like I said, it's a means to an end, right? This career in MMA is just a means to what I really want in life, and that's to be near my family, to make our property bigger and have the Maverick Ranch be a huge ranch and like this family place that can be passed on for generations. And I want to have a family business that I personally want to at least help my siblings start, if not start it on my own. My brother and sister are also trying to be ambitious and go out and do their own thing, right? Like, they're very successful in athletics, which is, of course, like, we have great genetics and we worked our butts off. All of us did, through that farm life. But they're also going, and my brother's a foreman of a landscape company, and my sister works with him. And my brother started his own company on the side of doing landscaping for people and welding up these like hay bins and stuff and all this stuff that he's doing on his own. He's just turned 19. Like, he's doing an amazing job, and I'll always give him credit for that and help him invest into whatever his dreams are. And it does make it easier for my dad to help him too, because it's so involved with his farm life, of course. But it's just incredible what they're able to do too, and it just really gives credit to my dad, I think, of how he raised us.
I can almost picture that Cordell had his family together. He really did his best in a wild world to instill the right characteristics to make his children successful. Yeah. You all went out, you branched out. I can see you smashing your goals and conquering this life, and then coming back together and having this Maverick Ranch business lifestyle family that no matter how crazy the world gets, no matter all this madness that's going on out there, you're going to have that same nostalgic feeling from your childhood where, like, these are the people that I love. These are the people that I want to spend my time with, and we're together through this experience. Yeah. Man, I'm going to come to the Maverick Ranch one day. I can tell you that right now.
You should.
That's incredible. You know what I mean?
Thank
it's because, most families fall apart. They move across the country.
Yeah, well,
they don't.
I want to talk about the negative side of it. I want to talk about the negatives of how I got there, And I'll say it first, and before anybody, I'm the biggest quitter you've ever met in your life. I have quit so many things throughout my life, not because they were hard, but because I knew it wasn't practical. Like, practicality is probably the biggest word to describe me. And you talk about reaching for the stars and stuff, but never make them stuff that's unrealistic. I never said, I'm going to be the best basketball player in the world. I'm 5'3.5". It's not going to happen. Like, that is a pipe dream, right? Like, stop. That's stupid. Or I'm going to be the first person to, have my own spaceship in space, or I'm sure that's already happened. But, like, one of those kind of things. It's like, stop. And if you're not going to make the goals and the plans and like put your foot to it to get there, then you really are pipe dreaming. You have dreamers and you have doers, and that's what they always say. And I'm both, I guess. I dream, but then I literally write down on a piece of paper the financial reasons and the pros and the cons and see if that works out for me and do that. and I go after that. But I've quit so many things along the way. I quit wrestling in high school after just a couple months of doing it because I liked jiu-jitsu more, because I had gotten an offer from a couple colleges to wrestle, and I was like, you know what, do I want to be a student athlete? I won't be able to turn pro in MMA because, you're not allowed to do that. And at the time, I didn't even know if I'd do MMA, but I was trying to think ahead. And I was like, I can never be a professional athlete because you cannot be in the NCAA at the same time. I'm only getting a part-time scholarship at this school that I would actually want to go to for their academic prestige because of sports, when I can get an academic full ride to just about anywhere I want to get with my ACT scores, So that made the determination there. I quit the high school wrestling team where I wasn't really supported by the coach. Very sexist from that matter at the time. I quit, like I used to be into sewing when I was a kid, and I quit that because I was like, I'm never going to do anything with this, I quit every sport I ever did other than jiu-jitsu, and it wasn't like after the season, I just quit. I was like, this isn't working for me, or you're not putting me in when I'm one of the best people here because of your daughter and your niece being in it too, and you want them to play first. Okay, fine, I'm done. Right? Then jobs, I quit waitressing. I got sick of it. It just wasn't where my life was going to go. I refused to get stuck in that cycle, and not be grateful for the service members out there that do waitressing and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't want to be part of that anymore. And so many things I just quit, and I encourage people to quit. If you're not good at it, or if you have other goals, quit filling your plate full of things that you're never going to eat, right? And I still have a lot of plates I'm juggling, and my dad, gets mad at me all the time. He's like, let one of them go. And I'm hoping to, and I've been able to one at a time. Like this job became better. It's a remote job. I only work 15 hours a week. I'm like, I can juggle that with MMA, and it gets me enough money that is worth juggling it, right? And then there's this school, and I'm like, I hate this plate. It's full of rotten food, but I have to eat it for a little while longer until it goes completely bad, And so I'm trying to get that plate out of the way, and then I'll only have 2. And then there will be life that gets added onto that in terms of being close to my family, and I hope that's the plate that becomes the biggest in front of me at the end of it.
Well, if that's not a pitch for why you should read her book, I don't know what is.
Yeah,
100%.
Thanks.
I mean, the bravery and the confidence within yourself that, like, the young woman that saw Ronda Rousey fight and said, maybe I can do that. You know what I mean? Because that's a certain characteristic. That's a delusional belief to some people that, like, no, there's no way I could do that. You went, maybe I can. But then the same woman that in another spot goes, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm going to stop this. You really have, like, almost extremes at both ends. You have these incredible dreams and goals and aspirations that most people can't even dream of dreaming of, right? But yet you have the ability to go like, nope, I'm done. I know I signed up for this team, or I'm a waitress, but not anymore. I'm not. So it's just that what a wide range of a human being, because most people like are in smaller boxes.
Yeah.
Like the very timid, shy, they kind of get bullied around, they get walked all over. You're exhibiting personality traits from so many different types of people. And really, that's what most human beings should do. We're all human beings.
Yeah, you need to adapt and move on. I say that's the strongest strength in MMA and in life, adaptivity and being able to speak or communicate with people, right? Communication is key, they say. It really is. And I credit a lot of that to me moving around as a child. I went to my first school that was different, that I wasn't used to, and I was the quietest kid in school. I was a mute. Like, literally, I just never talked unless I got called on in class, and I was a listener, and I was like, okay, I'll answer the question. But I was so quiet. Then I went to the next school, got in trouble a lot. Not for talking, but for, being mean to people. Not mean, but I didn't like being bullied around, and I got bullied a lot because it was middle school, and I was the tomboy, that didn't dress up or wear makeup or shave my legs at the age of 10, and like those kind of things, and it turned from Maverick to Manrick. I've said that before, and I was always the girl that had a six-pack and biceps and was really lean and very strong when I was a kid, and all the girls were just like, you're weird, and it was always girls that made fun of me. That's why I don't believe in any of the modern feminist things. I'm like, everybody in my life that made a positive influence, I'd say 80 to 90% were men, and I'm like, they are the reason I'm where I'm at, not women. In fact, they're the one, I guess you could credit them with being where I'm at from how mean they were to me, but a lot of times it was the men who were the real encouragers, Then I got further in school and I was like, all right, this personality trait doesn't work the best. This one works pretty well for getting people to like me, but I don't like it because then they step too far. Okay, this personality is good because I'm being aggressive and getting what I want, but then people don't like me because I'm being a little too mean, right? And then finally in high school, when we moved to the last school, I was like, I got it. I got the secret recipe to being polite, human, getting all of the people that matter to approve of what I'm doing and doing the right things while also still drawing that fine line of, listen, you crossed the line. You're over there. Don't ever look at me again. Don't ever talk to me again. If you talk to me, either I'll beat your ass or I just will walk away, depending on the level of how much I find you to not even be included in my life. I can't remember the exact biblical saying, but if you're letting the devil in or around you, then you're not one of God, And I feel like that's a whole thing where ignorance is bliss, or if you let evil people do evil things, then you're not good yourself, And I had to draw that fine line, and again, not perfect. I've let bad people do bad things around me or not stood up for people at certain times because I felt like I didn't know the situation bad enough, and I've learned to regret those. But I found that balance as I move through things and just looking back, as you said, taking that step back from the big box and being like, okay, here's what I need to do in life to get not only where I want to go. That's the whole manipulative part, right? Like, I'm like, who really am I? I don't know. I'm probably more cynical than I let on, Probably a little meaner than I let people think I am. I'm a little bit more judgmental, but I don't act like it, or I keep it to myself, or I learn to change that a little bit, But all those things, the adaptability is so huge. It goes all the way down to fight IQ. It goes all the way down to IQ in life, being able to think long term rather than short term, and trying to get those people around me that I care about to do the same thing and carry that on. The other thing is the charisma we were talking about. I've always had this thing where I'm like, I wonder if this is my purpose, And that was always people coming up to me and finding some level of comfort by talking to me about hard times in their life. And I'd be 17 years old, and have full-grown women and adults in general, but usually women, coming up to me and telling me about bad things that happened in their life, or, I got pregnant and I'm debating an abortion, or I had this sexual assault happen to me, or I'm thinking about committing suicide. Like all these things that as a 17-year-old, not only had I not dealt with myself, but I was really kind of helpless in how to help these people, and they're begging me not to tell people or, get them professional help, and I just pray about it, and I actually would ask my dad and be like, hey, not going to tell you who, but how do I help this person? What do I do? I don't know. I'm not smart enough for this, or I can't take this on. And now I'm finally to an age where I'm like, wow, like maybe this is my purpose, to like be that approachable person for whatever reason. I don't feel like I'm that approachable, but people always come and talk to me, and I'm like, that's great. I love that. I love that I can be that person. And it makes me think how well I hope that my future will be with whatever it is, children or family and everything else like that too.
Well, people do love leaders. People love people that, they feel that even if you're just there for them, they need to know that you're someone that they respect, that has, some care for them.
Yeah.
Someone that has fought fear yourself. Somebody that can stand proud in the face of pressure or from society. You know what I mean? We need these things. People need to go to other people that they believe, like, man, maybe this person can just even let me put my thoughts out on paper in front of us and help me sort through it. And nowadays, more than ever, anxiety is crippling most people in society. We need more leaders. We need more people that are competent at what they do, that are not afraid to say, hey, this is how I feel about this. Yep. These are the boundaries that need to be set. These are the things that, can't be acceptable
or even
in
show
life.
Their own weaknesses. You talk about anxiety. I, of all people, can say I've had such stress, such anxiety. I've had mental illness as far as anxiety goes, and just like breakdowns before, panic attacks, things like that. I had to walk through it with my dad and be like, I don't know what to do. I don't even know why I'm having them. Like, I don't have a bad life. I have a very great life. I've had great things happen, but I'm trying to juggle all these things, and it gets to be too much. And then the pressure of being the leader, and it's just a matter of, are you going to break to it or are you going to rise to it? And I'm sure you've had the same. Like, when you become a leader, when you have a lot of these things you do, and you have all these people who, even if they're not financially your responsibility or whatever else, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, like you feel like it's a little bit of your responsibility and it's your place where you can do something, you're not going to quit doing that, because then you've lost that purpose that you think you have. And it does. It makes people comfortable, but sometimes that means you're not comfortable. There was some quote, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's like, I'm not the person who needs people. I'm the person that people need, and whether that's hard on some people, sometimes it's just the truth.
Yeah, and really, like, it's just a burden you have to carry if you're that person. You have to step into that light. You can't really run from that, And then that connects you to purpose. And being connected to purpose is fulfilling. Fulfilling is a better life, etc.
And it connects you to few choice people, right? And
100%.
those people become everything you ever do anything for. Yep.
100%. So, Miranda, we have gone for over an hour effortlessly, like no problem. I want to shift a little bit to, you got a huge move coming to Denver. You're going to the new camp Elevation. You know, you're conquering your goals in MMA. You're conquering your academic goals. If anyone wants to support your career, back you, you know, possibly sponsor your career, follow you, I want to shout out all your, you know, social medias. How do they get in contact with you? You know, do you have a manager? And then I'm going to tell a real quick story about your father. Okay. It's a small world. I actually was there your first day at Invicta, your first fight.
Yeah, I guess
I was there in the hallway. I guess I'll tell it real quick. I was there in the hallway, and this guy, old-fashioned, like, Midwest dad. I could just tell that he was one of the dads of the girls. I don't remember if I was there with Bobby or Alicia, but I was there with one of them. And it was just like old-fashioned guy, and he was just so fired up. My daughter's fighting on this show, and da-da-da. So I was standing in the hallway, and I was like, I got to talk to this guy. I just liked his energy. He just exuded. He was so fired up for you. Like, and I was like, oh, who's your daughter? And he's like, Miranda Maverick. And I mean, he was just so proud. I'm Cordell. I remember he shook my hand, and he made a big impression on me because he was so fired up about your moment. I mean, like, a lot of fathers, you know, they're supportive, and hopefully you have a father support. But your dad was on top of the world.
Yeah, it's not a vicarious. People are like, well, he's living vicariously through you. They'll say mean things when I post about my dad. I'm like, no, it's a whole nother level. My dad's like, but he brags to everyone. He'll be like, well, I told these Mennonites about what you do. They don't even know what MMA is, and they thought I was crazy, but, you know, they know about it now. And I'm like, all right, Dad, thank you.
Your dad was giving off so much energy in this hallway. It almost felt like he filled the entire hallway because he was just fired up for you. And he was like, my daughter's Miranda Maverick, blah, blah, blah. And then I saw the fight, and then he came right in, and you guys embraced after. And I just remember being like, wow, like, what a bond between father and daughter. And, like, I almost, you know, tried to put myself into that man's shoes and be like, imagine raising your child in this world, giving the best you can, seeing them pursue their dream, they're being successful, you're there with them. Like, what an incredible experience. And life has the potential to be that way. And so many times we forget how special it can actually be. But yeah, I had met your father there, and he told me, like, my daughter's going to be one of the best in the world one day. And I shook his hand, and I was like, man, best of luck to her. And, like, to now sit across from you, you've come out to my camp, you came here after you won your tournament, you were here the next day. Like, it's been incredible to witness. And I remember saying to you, I think, well, after your tournament, I told you, while you're here, like, you know, I know you're going to get in the UFC, and I'm not shocked at all. But then you went back and you won another Invicta fight, and you were a little frustrated. I don't know if you remember this.
I was really frustrated.
You were a little frustrated. You were like, listen, I should be in the UFC. And I was like, Miranda, it's coming. Like, guaranteed. And then I was there ringside when you fought Pearl. And you butchered her. I mean, and Pearl's a great fighter. Extremely dangerous, talented. You taught a free MMA clinic to everyone that was there, just invite only, right? I mean, it was a clinical performance. You absolutely dismantled her. And that was like the time where it was like, you are undeniably ready for the next level.
It was the first time I fought angry. It was the first time I was like, you know, I don't want to just beat you. I want to hurt you. Like, and that gives a whole another level of motivation. When you go into a fight, and I joke about it because 2 fights in a row it happened. I was like, when you threaten me before a fight, when you threaten me or say something bad about my father or any of my family for that matter, but especially my dad, I'm like, I want to hurt you. And when you want Miranda Maverick to hurt you, like, that's probably not a good thing. Like, you know, even the Macy fight, everybody's like, oh, she's mouthy, she's this. I was like, oh, she was pretty dead silent. I was like, maybe she caught on. Like, I don't like people mouthing me. Maybe I would have been more violent in the fight. So I got to make myself mad somehow. But I appreciate it.
No, I remember you had an intensity about you. Just when you got in that ring, you had a fire in your eyes. I looked across there and went like, hoo, it's about to be a fight here. And then you did when you slaughtered. I talked to you right after that. I was like, girl, the call is coming. You're going to the UFC. Like, congratulations, you're going to the UFC. So now to see you there, and I know you are only scraping the surface of your potential. With your age, now going to the best camp you've ever been at, now leveling up to a new area. You're not even anywhere near your athletic prime yet. You're leveling up, you know, with your fight IQ. I can't wait. I can't wait to hopefully you win a world title one day and we can sit down and tell the whole story. But before we wrap this thing up, please shout out, you know, how to follow you, how people contact you, if people want to sponsor you, and just anything else you'd like to include.
Thank you.
And thank the people.
Yeah, thanks. I'd actually like to include a little tidbit. You know, you talked about my dad at my first pro fight, and it never even shied away since today. He always corners in my fights. The only one he didn't was the one in Abu Dhabi that we had passport issues during COVID era. And he wasn't able to come to that, but he's always in my corner. My second pro fight was probably one of the best memories I ever have with my dad in the fighting world, because, Cal Holiday, she's this very intense woman, and she was very jacked, and, I'm just turned 19, and I'm sitting there like, oh, I'm gonna die, like my coaches had already bragged about this girl when they saw her live the previous time, and they were like, oh, she's unbeatable, she's this, and said that when I ended up taking the fight against her next. And I remember my coaches were like, maybe that's not a smart fight to take, and I took it. I was like mad that they even had any kind of doubt. And at that point, they changed and they were supportive, and they're like, all right, let's get ready for this fight. But the whole training camp was so intense because I was so nervous, and I really was like, I could potentially lose this and I'll be 1-1 as a pro. That's never a great number, And my dad was nervous, but he was trying not to show it, but there's no way he can't. I know my dad well enough. I'm like, I can see a little twitch in his eye as he's getting nervous. He's like, yeah, you done everything you think I can do? Are you ready for her, her takedown she does or this? And I'm like, Dad, I've done everything I can do, But after that fight, if anybody goes and watches it, there's a moment after I win this fight where I get up and I start crying, and I'm crying and I'm screaming, and I hear my dad scream, my nickname, I'll just say it on air, he screams, Puddin' Bear, and I run over to the edge of the cage, and he has thrown a guard. He's thrown a guard into the seats at Invicta, and like anybody that was there can see it. Like I had tons of people message me and, we saw your dad throw this guy, and like people were coming up, and I was like, it's my dad. But before that, he jumps up to the top of the little tables that they have sitting by the cage, jumps up there and grabs the cage, and he's like, I love you, kid, and we're just crying basically, sitting outside the cage from each other, and I'm just, and he walks in and picks me up, and I remember joking with him afterwards. I'm like, you're supposed to be there right away, like get in the cage first. He's like, yeah, I kind of just lost it. I forgot to get in the cage first. I was just trying to come through it. And so that was one of the biggest moments where I was like, not only for myself, but for my dad to see me get to where I want to get because of things he's done. And just a tidbit about him, he never got the chance to be in athletics. He was homeschooled his entire life. He grew up in this kind of culty religion thing. His parents made many mistakes in raising him. Not the best environment to be around for personal success as a child, and he never got the chance to do athletics, but he's probably one of the most athletic and strong people and strong-minded people I know. And so to be able to kind of be like, this is what you could have done, these are the genetics that you've passed on that have gotten me. And my sister just got second in state her first year wrestling, and my brother and sister are both team captains, and my brother purely on strength alone almost made it to state, and just all these things where I'm like, you did this, and here's what I can do to show you that you did this and represent. But I'll end that there. I could talk, like I said, I want to write a book someday, and I want it to be 1,000 pages long, but I'll try to shorten it from that or do a series or something. But I want to shout out all my sponsors and stuff. I have friends and family who sponsored me at the beginning, and now bigger companies that do, and I just appreciate especially the ones that have stuck by me from the beginning. Top Mount Apparel and HKA USA, they've both been by me as I've developed a website now and have their gear that's sold on there. It's my gear, but they make it for me. They manufacture it. So if you want to, go check out fearthemaverick.net. It has like merchandise from shirts to gloves that are personalized, and I create these designs myself. Got the logo from Noble Nation, so I appreciate them for that. And this girl named Trinity Art, you'll see it on my Instagram. She made my new logo that's getting ready to come out, and it's like a whole caricature of me. It's kind of funny if you go see it on Instagram. Speaking of which is at fearthemaverick_HOMT. That's the easiest way to follow me, or go message me on the website at fearthemaverick.net. I do seminars now if you have any interest in that, all the way from MMA, Muay Thai, women's self-defense, jiu-jitsu. If you go check out, there's some clips of me doing some striking techniques. There's some clips of me doing jiu-jitsu techniques. I feel like I'm competent enough to teach most any area except for Taekwondo, as we figured out.
Oh my God.
Kicks aren't my specialty when it comes to spinning and stuff, but everything else, please go check out the website, check out the Instagram, and thanks for having me. Yeah.
No, truly a pleasure. I hope everybody continues to follow your career, and then one day when you're world champion and you're moving on to your next thing, I want a part 2 of this.
All right, sounds good.
All
Thanks.
right, we'll wrap this up.
All right.